So this first one today, that is, I'm going to start now. I think the Professor Majani would have actually covered that in quite a bit of detail already. Okay. But what I'll try to do is, try to give it a kind of a shape, so that एक minute, so that you get the whole perspective of this industry, including the origin or the historical background of how it originated. And let me tell you, actually, this particular industry is not that old. If you trace back the history of this industry, it is not more than something like 100, it's around 150 years old. But in that short span of time, primarily from 1910 to 1920 onwards, 1930 onwards, it has actually more or less replaced any other fuel that was known to mankind in terms of our day to day use. Before I begin, I would also like to mention that it is impossible for us today to think about maintaining our current lifestyles without the use of some material or the other, which actually originates from crude oil. For example, from the time you get up from the bed till you actually sleep, you actually use, the oil or crude oil in one way or the other, right across your complete daytime. For example, when you get up, you brush your teeth. The toothbrush itself is made out of polypropylene, which is manufactured from crude oil. When you cook your food, it is either on natural gas or LPG. Then when you drive home or off, to the office, or for this matter, for once we get out of this COVID, to the classrooms, you need fuel, and so on and so forth. So, even the containers, even the pen that we use, the pen that you are using for writing, even the plastic of that pen has come from crude oil. So, it's actually virtually impossible for us to exist today. And so, what you will learn in this module is, a very interesting history of this industry, which actually, and it is very well known that this whole industry was governed by what is called as seven sisters. The fuel and petrochemicals, what exactly are they, and why they have become so important for us to even exist today. Was it going to last forever, crude oil reserves, and how much do we consume? I mean, many of you may not even know how much crude oil is being consumed around the world, and how much do we consume in India? So I will give you a very strong perspective with respect to our own country. Prices of crude oil, which actually more or less govern the prices of almost every commodity that we use or buy, and then the future trends. So I think it is more or less a kind of a bird's eye view about this industry, less technical but more in terms of trying to give you the correct perspective. If you look at these pictures, this is something that we are all very familiar with. Let me get my pointer. You can see all the five pictures that you see, the kind of vehicular traffic. If you're in Mumbai, it's something that we have to actually look at and wrestle with almost on a day-to-day basis. But this is not very uncommon. Almost everywhere in the world, you'll see the kind of vehicular traffic that you see. And we have various kinds of vehicles, sports vehicles that you see on the top left, or a sedan, luxury vehicle, or something that we would like to use for, go to mountainous roads, sedan that we use and, own for our day-to-day use. Public vehicles like a police vehicle or a fire vehicle, and sports vehicles like a two-wheeler motorcycle. In addition to that, the goods that are transported around the country, whether it is liquid, whether it is solid, are actually transported through trucks, and these trucks also need fuel. So anything, whether it is liquid nitrogen, liquid oxygen, or even any goods. Of course, the story doesn't end there. That was as far as land transport is concerned. The other modes of transport, like the ocean transport, which actually is the backbone of international trading, this again needs fuel. In fact, then we have air traffic, air transportation like aeroplanes using what we call as a jet fuel. And then beyond that, fuel that we need to support, wars and to actually protect our territory. So whether it is fighter jets, helicopters, tanks, or even navy ships. So everything needs fuel. But that is one side of the story. The other side of the story is that in addition to fuel, we also need products which we use on a day-to-day basis, and that comes from what is called as petrochemicals. And why it is called petrochemicals is that these chemicals are manufactured from petroleum, which is called crude oil. And here we have two types of petrochemicals. One is the olefins like ethylene, propylene, and butadiene, which are shown at the top. These are the olefins. So propylene, the major use of propylene is of course to make polypropylene, which is used for making all kinds of products that you use, like a houseware, etc. And also propylene is used for making super absorbent polymers, which are used in diapers, sanitary napkins, etc., etc. As well as, there are many other uses of propylene in terms of polyurethane foams and things like that. Ethylene, of course, is again a kind of a raw material to make a very large number of products. For example, polyethylene and polyvinyl chloride, which is again another plastic which we use. In fact, with the current COVID situation, the personal protection kit, which actually people use in the medical staff and the doctors, that is all made out of polypropylene. Even the N95 mask that you wear is again made out of fibrous polypropylene. And then, of course, with butadiene, I mean, these are just a few examples. There are other olefins like 1-butene and isobutylene, etc., which are also having other uses. But butadiene is primarily for making tires, which are used. So, like styrene butadiene rubber, SBR rubber, which is used to actually make tires on which run your vehicles. On the bottom half, you have the aromatics. So these are the two pillars of petrochemicals: the olefins and the aromatics. The aromatics like benzene, toluene, xylene, there is huge number of uses. Of course, benzene goes into, in fact, the detergents that we use today to wash our clothes is actually the major building block is benzene. So you alkylate the benzene to make LAB and then sulfonate and neutralize. So the active matter is actually sodium alkyl benzene sulfonate. And many other applications, of course, and xylene and of course toluene. Toluene is also used to make explosives by which we can actually, do mining, etc. This is so these are the two areas. So crude oil or petroleum, the way we understand, is actually used to make fuel and petrochemicals. So what is this crude oil? Crude oil is actually a hydrocarbon. And when we call up a hydrocarbon, it is just one carbon and two hydrogen. Okay, so the building block of any hydrocarbon is CH2, and it was formed, millions of years ago because of vegetation and animals getting buried under the ground, and then over a period of millions of years, they got decomposed and converted themselves into what we call as a crude oil. So this is, and so it has many names. Some people call it as crude oil. Some people just call it as oil. Some people call it as petroleum. But essentially, it is a hydrocarbon, hydrogen and two carbon, one carbon and two hydrogen atoms. But in addition to these two elements, carbon and hydrogen, it has other impurities as well, like oxygen, sulfur, nitrogen, and heavy metal atoms. So, and they are in different proportions. Although we may not like to have them, in fact, in our industry, we actually remove them. And it will be great if they are not there. But unfortunately, we have to live with them. And so the mother nature gives us hydrocarbon, but it also gives us, along with that, these other impurities. And they actually vary depending upon where the crude source comes from. Let me actually walk you through a brief history on crude oil. The first oil wells were drilled in China way back in the 4th century, and the depth was up to about 800 feet. So this is the first documented, know-how that, or at least information on the crude oil. And the wells were drilled using bits attached to bamboo poles. The burnt oil was actually burned to evaporate brine to produce salt. So essentially, it was used as a fuel to get salt out of seawater. The first, major impact was made in North America, in the U.S., when in 1858, the first oil wells were drilled. So you can see, friends, that 1858, 1860, which is just about 160 years ago. And if you compare that with the history of our own country, and even some of the greatest civilizations in the world, out of which India is of course the topmost, Indus Valley civilization. This appears to be fairly recent. Okay, so 1858, the first oil wells were drilled, and within 2 years, the first oil company was formed, an integrated oil company. And in the next 4 decades from there, from 1860 to 1900, basically there was a kind of just a kind of an escalation of oil drilling in the US, and the drillers or people who got trained in this science and art later dispersed in the various parts of the world, and that's how actually crude oil was discovered in many other countries, but it was first actually commercially used, I mean commercially drilled and used in the US. And this person that you see on the right has actually made that happen. His name is John D. Rockefeller. You must have heard about him. In 1870, he formed one of the iconic companies called Standard Oil Company, which by about 1880 controlled almost 90% of the US refineries and pipelines. So basically, it was more or less analogous to oil industry, Standard Oil. And of course, he minted a lot of money. He was actually one of the wealthiest person known at that time in India, in the world. and of course he gifted a lot of this money for useful purposes. The Standard Oil Company is actually a mother company, which actually existed almost for 40 years, from 1870 to 1911. And it actually established itself in various parts of the US. So the Standard Oil Company in Ohio was renamed as Marathon Oil. The same company, Standard Oil Company was renamed as Ohio, which is actually got merged with British Petroleum. The Standard Oil Company, which was established in New Jersey in the US, got renamed as Esso. And then, actually, after it acquired Humble Oil Company, it renamed itself as Exxon. The one in New York was named as Mobil, and along with it acquired Vacuum Oil Company, and then actually Mobil was bought out by Exxon. And so what we know now is a big major called Exxon Mobil. Then, of course, the one in the California was renamed as Chevron, and it actually acquired Texaco and Unicol, and so that is known as Chevron today. The one in Indiana got renamed as Amoco, and that became part of BP very recently, in the last century, around about 1999 2000 time frame. And then Standard Oil of Kentucky, it actually got merged with Chevron. And of course, in the Netherlands, you had a major company called Shell, and in UK, British Petroleum. So now, if you look at internationally, there are some 8 or 9 major companies which are operating today. Some of them are, of course, within the country. Like in India, we have Indian Oil, Bharat Petroleum, Hindustan Petroleum, and then Reliance. SR has now been renamed as Niara. But internationally, when you talk about international oil companies which actually operate in more than one countries around the world, like for example, ExxonMobil has operations in more than 32 countries around the world. Similarly, Shell, similarly British Petroleum, and you have others like Petronas. You have in Brazil, you have Petrobras, in the so there are some very large number of oil companies today which actually are actually active in this operation. Now, talking about crude oil, this is obviously drilled out from under the ground, and basically we are not going to go too much deep into this, but it is actually because of a certain rock formation, and you have water as well, and on which the oil floats. So you need to have an impervious rock above which the water and oil sits, and then you have a cap rock. So this cap rock actually keeps this whole system sealed in, and depending upon how you drill it, if you drill it all the way, you might actually end up in terms of a dry hole with no oil, or if you drill it very shallow, you might only get a gas well or an oil well. So invariably, what happens is that when you actually dig out oil from under the ground, you get all the three things. You get water, you get oil, as well as you get gas. So it actually passes through a three-phase separator, where you actually separate out the salt water, the what we call as brine, and from the oil and gas, and then you take the oil and the gas and use it. I'll give you an example. For example, in our own country, we have a major oil production in the Bombay, in a place called Bombay High. Bombay High is about 300 kilometers west of Mumbai, and we have many platforms there. It's actually offshore drilling there, and so there actually, the oil and the gas is taken out. Of course, the seawater, the brine is put back into the seawater. But we take the gas and the oil, and the gas is brought to Uran. Uran is near Mumbai, and from the gas and the oil is brought to Uran, and from there the gas and the oil is separated, and what this is called Bombay High oil, and the gas is actually then what we receive in places like Nagothane, etc., is actually that gas, which is used to crack and to produce ethylene and propylene. So this is how actually this is produced. Now, and so ultimately there are two products that we get. One is called as natural gas, and the other is called petroleum. Natural gas is basically essentially methane, but a little bit of ethane, propane, butane would also be there. So in our own country, we have natural gas coming from Uran and also from Hazira. So a large amount of this gas from Bombay High also lands up at Hazira, and from in Hazira they actually recover to the maximum possible extent the C2, C3. When I say C2, it is ethane, C3 is propane, C4 is butane, etc. So they recover that, and the what is called as dry gas, that is methane, is put through the HBJ pipeline. That is the Hazira Bijapur Jagdishpur pipeline, which is a cross country pipeline going all the way from Hazira to Jagdishpur in UP. And at the end of that pipeline, you have the complex of GAIL, which is Gas Authority of India Limited at Pata, from where they actually take this gas, and separate out the C2, C3, and use that for cracking, and the rest of the methane is sent to Delhi and other uses for making either it is used also as a fuel, but also essentially to make fertilizers. The petroleum, the liquid part is called petroleum. It's a complex mixture of both cyclic and non-cyclic hydrocarbons. And we'll talk very deeply about all this. So I don't want to spend too much of time about what do we do, because the rest of the course essentially, talks about petroleum and how do you process it to make useful products. I'll just talk briefly about the various sectors of this industry. I think you should know, because each of these sectors are huge in their own perspective. So we have the whole industry is kind of divided into three sectors: the upstream, midstream, and downstream. The upstream sector is what is called as exploration and production. This actually involves the search for hydrocarbons, whether it is natural gas or whether it is crude oil, either on surface, that is in the country, or actually offshore, that is underwater. And so basically, the whole effort of organizations who are actually belonging to the upstream sector is basically to explore and produce crude oil and natural gas. In our country, Oil and Natural Gas Corporation, that is ONGC, and Oil India Limited, OIL, these are the two majors public sector companies which are actually in this particular segment, the upstream oil and gas sector. The midstream part is more in terms of taking care of this material and then to transport it and to store and so on and so forth. So the midstream sector is also not very small. It is huge actually, which is involved in transportation. The transportation maybe is essentially based on pipelines and tanker and trucking fleets, but it's more economical to actually transport liquids using a pipeline as well, and gas of course. So the HBJ pipeline, which is a cross-country pipeline, is owned by GAIL, Gas Authority of India Limited. So you have companies like GAIL who are actually very active in the midstream segment. And the downstream, of course, is the area where we are going to talk about. So this entire area of petroleum refining technology, petroleum refining engineering belongs to the downstream sector, where you actually take the crude oil and you process it to make various products, including actually processing and purifying natural gas. So there are many operations that you need to do on natural gas before you ultimately use it at your home for cooking, or actually in commercial vehicles for running the vehicle. Now, if you look at what is the availability of this crude oil, this is gives you a rough idea. I would say that this is the final word, but this gives you a kind of an order of magnitude idea as to how much crude oil do we have in the world. Of course, the leading is Middle East. Almost half of the crude oil that exists under the ground actually exists in in Middle East. Around 800 billion barrels actually, maybe more. This is something that they know. Maybe there is much more that they don't know. And if you look at the Middle East, there are many countries which belong to the Middle East area, like what we call as OPEC members. OPEC stands for oil producing and exporting countries. Saudi Arabia, of course, leads them all. 16% of the crude oil out of this 800 billion barrels actually is in Saudi Arabia. Iraq and Iran are not very far behind, around 8 to 9 to 10%. And then Kuwait, UAE, and so on and so forth. And that's why you find that there is a lot of wealth in these countries. The wealth is not because of technology, but just because they have a large amount of this resource which they can produce and sell. And if you would have seen today's prices of crude oil, it is $80 a barrel. In fact, when the COVID started, it had gone down to even $20 a barrel. But today it has actually come back to $80, $80 per barrel. One barrel is about, this is what we talk about as a US barrel. There's an imperial barrel also, but this is US barrel, and one US barrel is about 159 liters, roughly about 160 liters. So 160 liters of crude oil is about $80. And given the price of, given the exchange rate of US dollar, roughly actually this amounts to roughly about 40 rupees a liter. You can actually do this calculation. US dollar is about 75 and barrel is 150 liters. So any price of crude oil, whether it is 80 or 100 or 200, you divide it by 2 and you get rupees per liter. So crude oil as it is produced. Then of course you have other costs like transportation and the custom duty, etc., etc. So you can imagine that crude oil, the way it is available today, is at 40 rupees a liter. And then you have Latin America, North America, Africa, Eastern Europe, Asia, Pacific, Western Europe. And you can see the quantities of crude oil that they have. Of course, in less India, as far as our own country is concerned, I don't think we have too many proven oil reserves. Uh, can you just give me a minute? There's somebody who's continuously ringing. Hello? Yeah. Yeah, can I call you back? I'm in a meeting, Nilima. I'll just call you back. Yeah. 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 So going from here to this is actually roughly the kind of crude oil distribution that you see around the world. So this is actually when I talked about Latin America. most of it is actually in Venezuela. But Venezuelan crude is not a light crude. Actually, when we talk about $80 a barrel crude oil price, it is more to do with some of the premium crudes like Brent and WTI. Let me tell you, there are two types of crude oils which are considered as the industry standards. The in the UK and Europe, the price of crude oil is actually linked with the price of a crude oil called the Brent crude, BRENT. And in the US and that part of the world, the benchmark on which the crude oil prices are governed is called as WTI, that is Western Texas Intermediate. Western Texas Intermediate. So WTI actually is the more or less a benchmark in the US and Brent in the UK and Europe. If you look at Venezuela, Latin America, the 350 to 342 billion barrels. This is actually a very low quality crude oil, mostly bituminous. North America, this includes US and Canada, etc. As far as our own country is concerned, in India, we have crude oil mostly in Bombay High and of course in Northeast, in Assam. That's where actually in northeast in Assam, that's where actually the crude oil in India was discovered for initially, basically in the end of 19th century, just after the discovery in the US around 1880, 1890. We also the Britishers in India they discovered crude oil in Assam, and there's a place called Digboi, Digboi, where actually crude oil was initially discovered and a refinery was set up, which is the oldest refinery in the world, while it's still operating. That refinery is owned by Indian Oil and it is still operating. And of course, it is the smallest refinery in the world, about zero point 0.7 million tons per annum. And the name Digboi actually came from the fact that the Britishers were asking the Indian, people to dig deeper. So they kept on saying dig boy, BOY, dig boy. And that's why actually that city was called Digboi. It's very unique. It's very humorous to know that actually the Britishers are telling our Indians to dig deeper, deeper, and that's why the name of the city came as Digboy. So that is something about our own country. Other than Assam and Bombay High, we have some crude oil in Gujarat, both in North Gujarat and South Gujarat, and in the eastern sector, southeast sector, like for example near Vishakhapatnam, near Krishna Godavari Basin, and further down near south of Pondicherry, in a place called Tatipaka. So this is where actually we have crude oil, but of course the other countries as well. And this map gives you the kind of crude oil reserves that you have. Canada about 170 gigabarrels, but this is mostly bituminous crude. Basically, crude oil, bitumen coming from tar sands. US about 36.5. We don't have much in India. Iran, Iraq. So you can see that most of it is actually in this particular region. Of course, Russia also has a significant quantity of crude oil. As far as consumption is concerned, the world consumes roughly about 100 million barrels per day. I'll repeat our planet, the entire humanity consumes about 100 to 105 billion barrels per day of crude oil. When we talk about millions of barrels per day, just remember that 20,000 barrels per day is equal to 1 million ton per annum. That is a very nice formula. Please remember that. 1 million ton per annum is equal to 20,000 barrels per day. So actually, if you convert 100 million barrels per day of crude oil, you can imagine, how many million tons per annum of crude oil would that be? And bulk of it, of course, almost 20% of that is consumed by the US itself. This the first bar that you see on the left, around 18 to 19 million barrels per day. And of course, European Union, China, Japan. We have actually now taken over Japan. This particular slide is slightly old. India now consumes close to around 250 million tons per annum of crude oil, which is roughly about around 5 million barrels per day. So our total consumption is about in this range, around 5 to 6 million barrels per day, and we have actually surpassed Japan. So we are actually number three actually in the world. If you assume that European Union consists of various countries, so after US and China, we are the third largest consumer of crude oil now. And the way we consume crude oil is actually through various refineries. We have a total of 23 refineries in our country. You can see Digboy on the far east, and all these refineries are actually owned in three different ways. Either by public sector, which is actually owned in a way by government of India, and there, of course, you have Indian Oil Corporation, which owns largest number of refineries. Like Indian Oil owns refineries in Panipat, in Pathra, in Koyali, in Baroda, near Baroda. Then the one in West Bengal at Haldia, and of course four refineries here. The Indian Oil refinery in Baroni, in Bongengao, in Guwahati, and Digboy. So these are Indian oil refineries, and of course the refinery in Chennai, that is called Chennai Petroleum Corporation Limited, is actually fully owned by Indian Oil, but it is still a subsidiary. It is still not Indian Oil. It has its own name called CPCL. The second largest major is HPCL, Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited, and they actually operate two major refineries, Mumbai and Vishakhapatnam. In addition to that, they have a refinery along with in joint sector along with Mittal Group in Bhatinda. That is HMEL. We call it as HMEL, Hindustan Mittal Energy Limited. So that is operated in Bhatinda. The third is Bharat Petroleum Corporation. Actually, Bharat Petroleum Corporation started its operation in Mumbai and then later on acquired Kochi refineries. So now Kochi refinery in Cochin is also part of Bharat Petroleum. And then it actually, along with Oman, there's a joint venture called Bharat Oman Limited, which is operating a refinery in Bina. And and then, of course, Numaligarh refinery. So Numaligarh refinery was earlier independent, and then it was bought out by Bharat Petroleum. There's something interesting I would like to tell here that as far as our own country is concerned, the setting up of the refineries in our country were done by two major international organizations. Shell set up BPCL. The refinery in Mumbai in Chembur was actually earlier set up by Shell. And the one in another one in Mumbai was set up by ESSO, which is now Exxon. And ESSO also set up the refinery in Vishakhapatnam. While there were other refineries like the one in CPCL, the refinery in Kochi, which were actually set up by other companies like Caltex, etc. And they all got merged into what is called as Indian Refineries Limited, and finally it became Indian Oil Corporation. While actually as Bharat Petroleum, Shell got nationalized to Bharat Petroleum during Indira Gandhi's time when she was the Prime Minister. So in mid 70s, Shell was nationalized to Bharat Petroleum, and SO was nationalized to Hindustan Petroleum. And in addition to that, we have the world's largest refinery in Jamnagar. One of the students here actually worked in there, I think, which is the world's largest refinery in Jamnagar, that is owned by Reliance. And of course, another big refinery near to Jamnagar in Vadinar, which is earlier was owned by SR, and now it is in joint venture with Russians. It's called Niara. So this is, of course, there is another refinery which has come up in Paradeep. That is also by Indian Oil. So these are 23 refineries in India processing close to 250 million tons per annum of crude oil. Almost 85% of the crude oil that we actually process in these refineries are imported. And our own production is only about 33 million tons per annum, which is very small. You divide 33 by 50, it's only zero point 0.6 6 million barrels per day. Like 1 million barrel per day is roughly about 50 million tons per annum. So it's only zero point 0.6 as compared to the world production of 100 million barrels per day. So it's very, very tiny. So we actually import almost 85% or 90% of the crude oil that we actually consume. And that by far is one of the largest foreign exchange outflow from our country. Coming on to the properties of hydrocarbons, we will talk about it in more detail as we go through, but just to give you an idea, that although crude oil might actually appear to be a very complex mixture of hydrocarbons, but there is a certain commonality amongst these hydrocarbons. All of them are insoluble in water, largely insoluble in water. And most of them are actually lighter than water, so they float on water. And the boiling point and their current state is that as you actually increase the boiling, as they go up on the boiling point, they go from gas to liquid to solid. So, for example, if you're looking at materials, hydrocarbons which are 1 to 4 carbon atoms, it's mostly gas. 5 to 17 carbon atoms is liquid, and greater than 70 carbon atoms is solid. And as you keep on increasing the boiling point, the carbon number increases. And there are many other aspects to it, like for example, if you have isomers like branched hydrocarbons, their boiling point is lower than the one which are unbranched, and so on and so forth. And the various properties again depend upon carbon to hydrogen ratio, carbon to hydrogen bonds, etc. I'll not spend too much of time on this slide, but roughly I just wanted to tell you that crude oil contains three types of hydrocarbons. Basically, it contains paraffins. Again, paraffins can be in terms of normal alkanes or isoalkanes, or actually cycloparaffins, which are called naphthenes, like cyclopentane or cyclohexane, and aromatics. And these aromatics could be either single ring, two ring, multi ring, and we'll see in more depth as we go along. And in addition to that, of course, you have all these, sulfur, non-hydrocarbon species like nitrogen, sulfur, oxygen, which are not actually present, in their native form. They are always combined with some hydrocarbon moiety. For example, sulfur mostly is present in form of thiophenic sulfur or benzothiopenic sulfur or dibenzothiopene. And another thing which I wanted to mention, which I suggest that you should remember, that crude oil will not contain any olefins by definition. You can see in this slide there is no olefin. So anything coming from under the ground after it has actually cooked in Mother Nature for millions of years, don't expect any olefin to be there, because olefin is a very reactive molecule. So if there are any olefins to begin with, they would have all reacted and formed other species. So crude oil by definition doesn't have any olefins at all. And of course, this is what we do in terms of fractional distillation and making the various products and the other processing units. We'll talk about in greater detail later. And in addition to that, how you make petrochemicals. Various olefins as well as various aromatics. Coming on to the most interesting part of this whole industry, which more or less governs the economies in the world in terms of their GDP, is actually the crude oil price. And it's very interesting actually that in the recent past, the major wars were fought because of crude oil. The fall of the Berlin Wall, the first Gulf War, the second Gulf War, which happened in the in the early 90s, in the last century, were all because of crude oil. And there's a it's interesting the way it went through. In fact, when I actually drew this slide, it was roughly the onset of pandemic, and it actually went down in 2020 to almost like $21 a barrel. In fact, actually, at some time in the future trading, it was even negative. In other words, people were giving money to take out crude oil because there was no demand. But again, it has gone up to $70 a barrel, and this is plotted in terms of inflation-adjusted dollars per barrel. Okay, so these are not the prices as it exists at that time. It was actually prices the way uh, as per the purchase parity today. Okay, so you can see that in '74 there was the first oil crisis that happened when there was an embargo by the Saudi Aramco in terms of production of crude oil. So the crude oil went up almost three times and two times, and that actually was called as the first oil crisis. And then for various reasons, so there is a large amount of volatility in crude oil prices, and this is what really drives not only the GDP but also the technology development around the world. In fact, it is the first oil crisis which actually woke up the world to understand that crude oil cannot be taken for granted. It is something which is to be considered as a precious resource, and the many technologies that we use today actually originated because of that. And of course, the issue of that Lehman Brothers, where the huge financial crisis took place, the 2008 global finance collapse, that actually took the crude oil prices to $165, which actually came down very suddenly down to 51, and that actually shook up the whole world. And even in our own country, you would have realized that almost everything we buy, including what we eat even in the restaurant, is controlled by GST. But the petrol and diesel that you buy from the petrol pump is not sold on GST. Okay, that is still the old taxation regime in terms of excise duty and sales tax, etc., etc. The reason is that this is one particular commodity on which so much of money the governments are earning, and they are heavily dependent upon that source of revenue. And that is the reason why, this is my perception, that is one of the reasons why fuels are not actually being sold on the new taxation regime. Having said all that, there are, of course, problems that we have created as we have gone along. There have been serious oil spills. The one in the Gulf of Mexico is a classic one, which was by British Petroleum, which actually taught world a lesson about how you actually produce crude oil from under the ground in the high seas. Global warming is an issue that is being talked about almost 24 by 7, every minute of it. And our industry is being blamed for global warming. Uh, there could be different views. People may agree, may disagree. But there is one thing which is common, and that is that almost every country, including India, has announced that will become net carbon zero. And what it means is to eliminate production of any carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. It has actually led to acid rains due to sulfur impurities, and that's why there has been increasingly stringent specifications on petroleum products, where we had absolutely no specification on gasoline and diesel in 1980s and 90s in our own country, to what is called as Euro 6 specifications today. So the petrol and diesel that you buy in the petrol pump is being sold on Euro 6 specification, less than 10 ppm sulfur. And of course, when we had this corona and suddenly there was complete stoppage of any transportation, including air transportation, we could see actually the clarity in the air. And that show that actually led to it's very clear that the smog and the soot that is produced in burning petroleum products actually increases respiratory problems. And of course, one of the perennial issues is the issue of waste plastic. The plastic like polyethylene, polypropylene, which is used, and then ultimately their final disposal, and other effects like ozone depletion and increased UV radiation. So there are problems. And as we speak, in the last 2 years, there has been an increased focus and perhaps a move to try to reduce fuel oil consumption and to be able to convert more of the carbon in the crude oil into petrochemicals. So there has this particular transformation is taking place as we speak, and I am 100% sure, and I repeat, I am 100% sure that this transformation more or less will get completed in your lifetime, where actually we might go to other modes of transportation other than using gasoline and diesel. Looks a bit difficult today and looks more like a pipe dream, but it perhaps would happen. And basically, people would actually try to go towards other sources of energy. Of course, sun is the only source of all kinds of energy that you can think of, other than nuclear. But sun provides was the source of the energy in the crude oil, which was actually stored below the earth. It is actually the source of energy when we use any plantation material, and solar photovoltaic is another source that we are all looking at in terms of using that in terms of electric mobility. So this is something that might happen, but if it happens, it has to be economically viable, of course, and convenient to use. Why actually gasoline and diesel has actually become a major source for transportation today is because of the ease and convenience as well as the infrastructure that is available around the world. But other than fuel, of course, one thing which will continue forever is actually the use of crude oil to make petrochemicals. So even though we might have electric mobility, but we still need a vehicle, and so all the vehicle parts we still need to manufacture. And these vehicle parts, as we see today, are largely plastics in order for lightweighting. So even the vehicle that you buy today, the dashboard, the seats, large amount of that is still made out of various kinds of polymers, which are made from crude oil. But in addition to that, of course, all the other things that we use. I mean, this picture is not complete picture. our spectacles that we wear, the coating that we have in our frying pans that is of Teflon, the pipelines, even this, these electric sockets and outlets, everything, even the shoes that we wear. So all these materials actually are manufactured from either olefins or aromatics or some other compounds coming from crude oil. So there is no way that we can survive without crude oil. But of course, whether we need to actually make gasoline and diesel and still actually keep on putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, that is something that we need to think about. And in addition to that, of course, in order to make this industry more and more efficient, talking about Industry 4.0, there is more and more of talk about automation, AI, and machine learning, big data analytics, etc. And this particular industry actually is one of the major uh, you know uh, supporters of this kind of development, because anything that you do in this industry, because this industry is huge. We don't talk about grams of material. We don't talk about kilograms of material. We don't even talk about tons of material. We don't even talk about 10 tons of material. We don't even talk about 100 tons of material. We don't even talk about 1,000 tons of material. We talk about million tons of material. So anything which is produced in millions of tons per annum is huge. And so any improvement that we can do, even by 0.1%, is huge improvement. And so many of these technologies are actually, they get momentum and get supported by this industry. And this is just a small cartoon which I just wanted to end this. Of course, and so this was all that was I wanted to talk about in terms of introduction to this industry.